Welcome to our channel. Let's begin the journey.
Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're tackling Module 4, Lecture 5, and unpacking a machine that honestly sounds like pure scientific alchemy, the Fast Breeder Reactor. We're going to take a deep look at the specific anatomy of the liquid metal design. This is a technology that challenges our very basic understanding of how energy consumption works, and it introduces some of the most complex, high-stakes engineering on the planet. So, let me ask you this. Can a machine actually create more fuel than it consumes? In standard physics, that feels like breaking the fundamental rules of thermodynamics, right? But we're going to start by completely challenging what you know about energy to hook you into the core concept of nuclear breeding. It is entirely possible, and understanding exactly how it works is absolutely mind-bending. Here's our roadmap for this anatomical tour. We'll hit the alchemy of breeding, fast neutrons, hexagonal lattices, liquid metal coolants, the three-loop system, and finally, the void coefficient. Let's get right into Section 1, the alchemy of breeding. You see, early nuclear pioneers were genuinely terrified we'd just run out of uranium. That fear made breeding fuel a vital goal for sustainable power. To understand this, we use something called the fissile conversion ratio. It's actually pretty simple. It's just the amount of fissile material produced divided by the amount of fissile material destroyed. Normally, if you're destroying more fuel than you make, well, you're just burning it. But if you can somehow flip that math, everything changes. This comparison brilliantly illustrates the difference. A standard reactor is always going to have a conversion ratio of less than 1. But the moment that ratio tips above 1, the machine is officially breeding its own fuel. It literally crosses a threshold, and we stop calling it a conversion ratio. It officially becomes a breeding ratio. How does this actually happen? Well, the reactor core is surrounded by a physical blanket of fertile uranium-238. As the core reacts, it throws off neutrons. That blanket catches those escaping neutrons, and through the magic of nuclear transmutation, it converts the fertile U-238 into fissile plutonium-239. It's essentially a parasitic design that breeds its own fuel, on the fly, which theoretically addresses our energy needs for thousands of years. Moving on to Section 2, fast unmoderated neutrons. Now we need to look at the microscopic physics, because we kind of have to throw out the traditional nuclear rulebook here. Traditional reactors use materials like graphite or heavy water to act as moderators. They want to slow neutrons down because those slower thermal neutrons are way better at splitting U-235. But breeder reactors, they are the exact opposite. For them to successfully convert that U-238 blanket into plutonium, they absolutely require those neutrons to be flying fast and completely unmoderated. That brings us to Section 3, hexagonal fuel lattices. To keep those neutrons moving at ultra-high speeds, engineers have to strictly enforce a no moderators allowed rule. They actively avoid putting any low-mass materials in the core. Think about it like a game of pool. If a cue ball hits another lightweight billiard ball, it loses a ton of speed. We don't want that. So, to pull this off, they pack the fuel into much tighter hexagonal structures, which drastically reduces the coolant-to-fuel ratio compared to traditional setups. But here's the catch. Without a moderator, you need highly enriched fuel, somewhere between 10 and 30%, just to sustain the reaction. Because those fast-moving neutrons are so much harder to capture, you literally have to increase the concentration of your U-235 or Pu-239 fuel to keep the whole chain reaction alive. It's basically using richer bait. Let's shift gears to Section 4, liquid metal coolant. So we can't use water to cool this thing because water slows down neutrons. Enter liquid metal, specifically liquid sodium. Now, liquid sodium is an amazing conductor of heat, and it doesn't slow down our precious fast neutrons, which is perfect for keeping our tightly packed core from melting down. But it introduces massive engineering hurdles. For one, it has to be melted by electrical heaters before it can even circulate. Worse, it reacts explosively with water, and as it flows through the nuclear core, it actually becomes highly radioactive itself. Talk about a tightrope walk. However, before we write it off, there are some incredible benefits that make these crazy trade-offs potentially worth it. Unlike standard pressurized water reactors, a liquid sodium system operates at very low pressure, only about 1 megapascal. It achieves much higher core temperatures, which directly gives us a massive boost in thermal plant efficiency, up to around 40%. Plus, it allows the entire reactor footprint to be much, much smaller. This leads us right into Section 5, the three-loop system. Because we have radioactive sodium that literally explodes if it touches water, engineers had to design an ingenious isolation technique to prevent total catastrophe. It's a 3-loop system. Step 1 is the primary loop. This is where the hot radioactive sodium cools the core. Step 2 is an intermediate loop. This uses clean, non-radioactive sodium to safely pull the heat away from the primary loop. Finally, we reach step 3, the steam generator. Only here is that safe heat transferred to water to boil it and spin the turbine. What's really fascinating about the schematic is how clearly it maps out that complete separation. Notice how the primary radioactive loop stays entirely boxed in, contained completely within the reactor vessel shielding. That secondary loop acts as a vital, non-radioactive buffer. Basically, if the steam generator were to leak and water mixed with that secondary sodium, you'd absolutely have a chemical fire. But crucially, you wouldn't have a radioactive fire. Finally, let's look at section 6, the void coefficient. We need to objectively break down the severe costs and risks here. For one, to actually use that bread fuel, you have to chemically extract the plutonium from the uranium blanket. That means massive fuel reprocessing costs and, unfortunately, direct nuclear weapon proliferation concerns. But purely from a reactor physics standpoint, the single biggest hurdle is what we call a lightly positive void coefficient. Let me explain why this is so critical. In a normal water-cooled reactor, if things go wrong and the water boils away into a void, the moderation stops and the nuclear reaction naturally chokes itself out. It shuts down. That's a negative void coefficient. But with a fast breeder, if the liquid sodium coolant voids or boils away, the reaction actually speeds up. A core meltdown can lead directly to a reactivity excursion. It's a massive safety hurdle that requires absolutely flawless engineering to prevent. So, we have to ask ourselves, is the dream of unlimited nuclear fuel, literally enough to power humanity for thousands of years, truly worth these intense engineering complexities, the massive costs, and the inherent risks of liquid metal and positive void coefficients? It's a delicate, high-stakes balance of risk and reward that the energy sector is still debating today. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.
The view from here is breathtaking. Command, we are in position and ready for the next phase. If you liked the video, subscribe and comment the topic you want next. Thanks for watching, and stay unstoppable.